So this is the armhole 2-ply. That is, let's say, one side of the garment with the armhole. We close the shoulder to give it the look of the complete armhole. Okay, and then we flip it to the right side. This is the wrong side. Flip to the right side, and then I have my bias strip. I mark the right side of the bias strip as well and position it right side to right side. Position. And because I don't want to do a basting, so I'll use the pins, and I'm going to put the pins in vertically like this so that as I stitch, I'll just take it out. I mean, the best thing is to do a basting by needle and thread, but we can jump that step. And now, see how it looks? This is a curve of the whole armhole, the full length of the armhole, front and back. Okay, so I'm now positioning this bias strip on the garment, little by little. You treat the armhole as if it was straight, even though it's a curve. You take a little at a time and treat it as though it's a curve, it's a straight line. And this guy, the bias strip, is happy because it's naturally straight. And it's so subtle that the armhole curve doesn't realize that we're navigating its curve because we're taking a little straight part at a time. And I'm deliberately putting the pins in vertically so that I can remove them easily while I stitch. Okay, so the curviest parts, like here, we treat it as though it was a straight part. And that's how, or that's the only way that this binding or bias strip will work with it. Okay, so now he comes here. Gently coax it to treat the curve as though it was a straight line. Slowly. And because this has stretch, it works. It allows you to position it on the curve. So at the end of the day, you will see that the bias strip has actually lain on it. But this is where the challenge comes in. When it comes to sewing it, it's best to baste it, like hand baste with needle and thread. But I'm going to jump that step by just removing the pins as I go. Now, no speeding is going to help you here. You cannot speed your way through. You have a shoulder part of it over here, so you have to pay attention when you get there, and you have to keep turning to check the back because it has the propensity to pucker. You can already see it. So many times when students are sewing and they're not looking at the back, they can sew this down, they can sew that down, and it looks tacky. So you want to keep turning and checking. So I'm going to be stitching about 1/4 of an inch as I go, and I'm going the slowest pace, and I stop even at some points, making sure the needle is down while I check the back. And when the back is getting ready to pucker, a little pull or a slight pull will, stop that. And it helps to take it in little straight chunks at a time, okay, and very slow. All right, and then I make sure the needle is down while I'm adjusting, removing pins, and it's best to stretch out when you get to a point. Let me speed it up a little bit more. Okay, so put the needle down. You see, every time I'm trying to check something, I keep the needle down so it holds the position for me. There's a puckering opportunity here because of the joining. I have to look at it, open the seams, flatten it out so that it's a little more neater and not thick. Okay, coming to another pin, check the bottom, everything is straight, and then you continue your journey. Same thing here, but there's a chance for puckering over here, as you can see. So what I do is keep the needle down and unravel that. Make sure that I'm straightening it out and continue. Usually the curviest parts do that, but you can work your way around it. Not a problem. Okay, and you continue. You keep going and going till you come to the end. All right, now you can see you navigated the whole thing to the end. Because it's a round, armholes are round, you would go ahead and snip. Let me snip. Use a sharp scissors, especially at the curviest part. You would see that it's slightly gentle along this, you know, shoulder to the middle part of the sleeve. I mean, armhole. So you don't need to snip those parts. But getting towards the underarm area can be tricky. So we snip, snip, snip. And make it small, not too big, so that you wind up, you know, cutting through your stitching. But this snipping is extremely important. It allows you, let me see the back, gradually, I mean, thankfully it hasn't caught anything that it has no business catching. That's the most important thing to note. All right, so now we snip so that when we turn this, it will lie flat or lie easily like that. Okay, we can turn it to the wrong side and then we finger press like that. And force it to go to the back. Now, there are two kinds of bias binding. There's one that we send the whole bias strip to the back so that the right side will be looking something like this. This is one way. It's like you're treating the bias tape as it facing. You send it to the back, and there's a way to finish that. Then another way is where you create one by folding the edge, and then two by letting it sit, and then you leave part of the fabric showing like this. This is bias binding, and that is also bias binding. So I'll be showing both, but for now let's do this one, the one that goes all the way down. And when you do that part, there's a thing called understitch. Understitch is positioning the needle 1/8 of an inch away from the original sewing line, but making sure that the seam allowance is sitting on the strip instead of on the garment. Make sure the seam allowance is sitting on the strip, and you're just stitching the seam allowance onto the strip. When you do that, it would allow you to turn very easily, and I'm going to show you the results soon. It's called understitch. What happens is a lot of patterns will tell you to understitch in capital letters, but they don't show you how to do understitch. So you have to understand how to do an understitch. And it's just sewing the seam allowance onto your facing or your strip, bias strip in this case, as in this case. So this is understitch. The second stitching forces the seam allowance to lay flat onto the bias. And so now when I fold the bias and I'm bringing the whole thing down on the back, like that. Okay. And the the understitch has a way of hiding it completely. Now you can see it's really neatened out. Okay. And I'm going to show you the finish. It's very nicely done.